Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to this roundtable discussion titled Next Generation CDEs to Advance the Sustainability of the Construction Industry. Thank you for joining. My name is Dan Little and I'll be moderating the session today. Our speakers are showing on the screen now. They are Rahul Shah, Frank Weiss, Leon van Berlo, Sven Uttinghaus, and Florian Friedrich. A more formal introduction will be done shortly. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available to everyone that registered in due course. If you have any questions throughout, please post them in the chat and the speakers will address them at the end of the session. And I will just move on to the next slide before I hand it over to our speakers. I would like to remind you that your phone lines will remain muted for the duration of this webinar. I would also like to bring to your attention that buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that the participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process for their adoption is transparent, and standards that are developed do not favor any particular provider and are open, non-binding and accessible to all. This webinar is scheduled to last for an hour, so without taking up any more time, I would like to pass over to Rahul to formally introduce the participants and run the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, and good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're from, and thanks for joining the webinar. Today, we are fortunate enough to have experts with us discussing the next generation of CDEs and how it can support us in driving the net zero carbon neutrality and sustainability agenda in the industry. But before we dive into the conversation, let me just very quickly just reintroduce the experts we have here today with us. We have Frank Weiss from Oracle. We have Leon van Berlo from buildingSMART International. We have Sven, I'll get this right, Sven Uttinghaus from Tractebel and Florian Friedrich from VAMED. So thank you everyone for joining the panel. And myself, I'm from British Standards Institution, and I will be driving the conversation and moderating the conversation today with you. So why we are here today, today's topic, I'm sure you would have seen the topic, next generation CDEs and how it can help us drive sustainability. But if we go back in time in the industry, we started with sort of exchanging, files manually, and it worked okay, for small projects and what have you, but as the projects got more and more complex, it was quite challenging to exchange files manually. And then in the early 2000s, we saw the emergence of, the first generations of platforms, collaboration platforms, whereby we started exchanging sort of electronically, files, but still the challenge remained in terms of, that fostering the true collaborations and promoting the transparency. And that continued that challenge, and we are today here, we'll be discussing that how next generation of common data environment. So when we refer to CDE throughout the conversation today, we would be referring CDE as a common data environment, how the next generation of CDEs can support not only breaking the silos in terms of exchanging information and promoting the collaboration, but also is that cross-system exchange of information and that smooth transfer of information from design, construction, commissioning handover into the operations and FM as well. And we'll unpack some of these things with our experts panel today as we go into the conversation today. But before we do that, I would really like to know your thoughts on few questions. So if you could run, please, a poll, quick poll, and it would be great to have your thoughts on that. So we've got 1 minute to complete these 3 questions. If you could please submit your responses in 1 minute, that would be great. So the first question we have is, what is the most important value the next generation of CDEs can deliver for you? Single choice, please select a single choice. The next question we have is, how do intelligent platforms make clients and users more efficient? And the third question is that will CDEs, the next generations of CDEs, support sustainability requirements, i.e., carbon neutrality, net zero goals, and so forth. give you some time now. And I think, yeah, in 5 seconds. So Dan, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If we maybe put up the results, that would be great. Fantastic. So yeah, we can see the results now. Thank you everyone for submitting your responses. So wow, it's a very well-balanced sort of view here. But we can see here that automation and encouraging collaboration and data alignment are the top 3 sort of value add points, as we can see that how it can add value next generations. Really, really good to see that view. The second question, how do intelligence platforms make clients and users more efficient? And majority of them, this is also, nicely balanced view here, but the top 3 we can see is the deeper integration, close gaps of data flow. It's really, really important when we move from design, construction, handover into operations and that data flow. And allow clients to control data better. Really, really important point. And will see the sort of next generation support. And majority of you think, yes, absolutely. It's great to see that. And not sure, but very, very few think no. But it's great to see majority of you believe that it is going to support our sustainability agenda. So thank you very much. And we can now close that poll result and move into the most important part of today's webinar. So thank you. Thanks, Dan, and thank you, everyone. So let's move into the conversation. We saw some, really, really great results, like the feedback from the audience. And my first question to the panel, and I'll start with Sven, if that's okay with you, Sven. There are plenty of challenges in the BIM space and market. And in some area, there is still confusion. Well, many areas, we know the clients and end users, and there's still confusions. And you yourself is a user of a common data environment in your business. How important are CDEs today? So if I come to you, Sven, first.
Yes, sure. So you're right. There are some challenges we have. So CDEs are becoming increasingly important for our daily project work as an engineer company we are. And on the one hand, we are noticing a significant increase in demand in offers for CDE. And on the other hand, we have already included the use of CDE in our internal processes and offer this in proposals since we see many advantages in the use of it. And it is important that the selected CDE fits the project in terms of its functionalities and at best enables modular adaptation according to the requirements. So we have also found that the use of a CDE is not necessarily dependent on the project size, duration, and number of contractors. So it's depending on the use case. So the use case can already make sense in a small project, maybe. And moreover, this trains the use of the platform for further projects, and that's becoming more standard in our daily work and our daily business. But in order to handle the project in the sense of the single source of truth and in the best possible way without loss of information over the several phases, the use of CDE is indispensable from our point of view. And even if there is not always clarity as to who should provide the CDE, this is certainly also due to the lack of experience and different understanding of the function of a CDE, in our opinion. So sometimes the client just asks for one piece of CDE, same like, please make one BIM. I think we all have the experience, but the definition of the objectives and the use cases are missing. So that's the point we need.
Thank you, Sven, for sharing your thoughts. And it was quite refreshing to hear that, irrespective of the project size and scale, the CDEs are indispensable, in words, and the value that the clients, not only clients, but what I'm hearing is also the entire project stakeholders can gain from having that single source of truth, so to speak, without losing information. That's very, very important. So thanks, Sven, for that. And Florian, if I if you don't mind, I come to you on this one as well. You are also a user of CDE, and you use that in your business and on projects as well. So any thoughts from your point of view?
Yeah, good morning from my side. I think Sven highlighted quite all important points of it, but from our side, BIM enhances the planning teams to work together closer and closer each day. And this form of collaboration needs the right environment and regulation. So this steering brings also plenty of speed into the projects. And to keep the overview and make the right decisions to the right time, you need also the right new technical tools. And with no shadow of a doubt, I think next generation CDs are a very important part of that new environment. We need to work together very stringent in the future.
Great points, Florian, there. Right decisions at the right time, and we need that source of information that is consistent, and CD plays a key role there. So that's really good to hear. Thanks, Florian. Just this is a follow-on from this, these two comments that you made, you and Sven, Florian. But we still hear that, there is a confusion. What is a CD? I mean, if we go on construction sites and supply chain particularly, it's well and good. We have tier 1 contractors and tier 1 clients, all equipped and educated, but there is still that lack of understanding what a CDE is, and most importantly, what it is not, right? Because sometimes people think, sharing files via FTP sites is a CDE. Well, is it really? So what can help to overcome this confusion in the industry and raise that equal awareness? So if I come to you, Florian, following on your comments on that, any thoughts on that? How can we help industry overcome this confusion?
First of all, I think it's not a lack of understanding, but in most times coming from the past, it's a lack of trust. So, but for sure, the new way of working requires also new tools, which the CDEs will bring up right now. And there are often discussions what duty to put in which tool. And often the boundaries are not sharp enough to keep all this discussion away. And so to have now new standards where we can compare all these CDEs and other tools and to prove against standards. That makes it very important in all these discussions, because we know that this single point of truth to make also legal safe paths for each party in the project. That's all very important points, but at the end it's the gain for trust and to help to open the information to all parties involved in one project.
Thank you, Florian. And you mentioned a couple of good points there. One is trust. How can we enhance the trust in the information that everybody is accessing, right? So it's that trust element is really, really important. And in order to promote the new ways of working, in your opinion, the standards are important. So if I say, for example, standards like ISO 19650 and DIN Spec 91391, do you think they're important in terms of promoting that trust and common ways of working, new ways of working, Florian?
Yeah. 110%, because having certified security is from enormous importance to create trust, and also to have tools which are proved against these standards. That makes them comparable and very open to all people, and that's where we want to come. We want to have collaboration, and collaboration is based on trust. And that's only possible if I know what's behind that, right, and where my information will go or flow. And all this is done in the new CDs with all the new standards in the right way, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Florian. Leon, I would really like to get your thoughts on these too, because Building Smart International has been at the forefront of driving that interoperability agenda and that common ways of working. And any thoughts on this? How can we help industry overcome this confusion? What is a CDE or not?
Yeah, I think it's partly a confusion and partly also maybe high expectations. As with any new technology, there's a nice ring to it. It makes sense when you talk about it, and then expectations grow. I think Sven mentioned earlier that a couple of years ago we were talking about this. I want one BIM, and that was unrealistic. And today we're talking in similar terms about CDEs, and I think eventually that will settle as well. And as Florian also mentioned, trust. Those things are really trust, security. Those things are what adds value to the use of a CDE. And I think those fundamental components come from things like traceability. Obviously, I think standardization is a good thing. And ISO 19650 massively contributed to the adoption of CDEs. But I think this DIN spec, the German specification, really made it much more concrete and much more applicable to how can I use these CDEs in practice? What does traceability mean? And those examples, which are happening in Germany, are really good examples of how we can make it more useful for the rest of the world as well.
Thanks for the comments. And yeah, is that traceability of information really, really important, and the role that standardization can play. There is an interesting question on the chat box. What is the right way? Hold on, the chat box, please. What is the right way to choose the right CDE platform to our company based on the cybersecurity or based on the existing features? Are there any thoughts, Leon, from you on that in terms of, yes, there is a confusion, and you made a really, really interesting point there that it's partly a confusion, but partly, is that the expectations, that unnecessary, the high level of expectations. So how could users go about choosing the right platform, CD platform? Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm in a luxury position to give an easy answer to this. So I think you should be picking this based on the required functionalities. So as we saw in the poll as well, people want to have predictions, want to make automation between their workflows. I think understanding your own requirements, understanding your own functionalities and use cases in your own workflows, that's the starting point. And then you should pick a CDE based on that. And I think in the question that we saw here, should we pick it on data security, management of security, or cybersecurity, or features? To me, the first parts are all a minimum requirement given of a CDE. So it shouldn't, that should be in place for every CDE you choose. It shouldn't be like optional or anything. It should be the base of a true CDE. And then when you have a list of all of those true CDEs that implement this correctly, then you can kind of choose based on the functionalities and the features that you require in your workflows.
Thank you, Leon, for sharing your thoughts on that. And Sven, you're a user of CD, and procure CD and promote that throughout your supply chain as well. Any thoughts that you can share with our audience as well, that what's important when going through selecting a proper CD process?
Sure, yes. So the CDE must fit to the project and be used consistently and with discipline by all stakeholders in the project. So therefore, the CD should cover the required use cases, as Leon said as well, and not be overloaded with functionalities which are not needed for the project. So as I said before, module-wise, the open CDE. And so that makes sure that the user acceptance is as high as possible at the end. And that's the point we're going to, because of the success of a CDE and the project is largely dependent of the use of all of them. And furthermore, in my view, it is crucial how open the platform is to other systems and data formats, or how it enables vendor-independent data exchange. So developments in this area of open BIM, open APIs are the key to a real success and open up in the possibility of a CDE actually becoming a real center of communication and exchange, I think. And define standards for the CDEs like, or such as the ISO 19650 and the DIN-SPEC we have mentioned before, are a great help in establishing a common understanding of a CDE which is needed and functionalities. So if the CDE is also certified according to these standards, this increases the certainty of talking about the same thing on all sides. And we can ensure without further testing that the requirements of standards are met by choosing the certified CDE. So I think it's also regarding to the questions we have in the chat, some things are mandatory and not discussable, and other things are maybe needed by different functions and use cases we have to define or requirements of the project.
Yeah, thanks, Sven, for sharing that. And it's really good point you make there that, when selecting a CDE, look at the workflows and project requirements and, and then choose CDEs, based on that. And the role that the standards play is critical there as well, because somebody asked or made a comment in the chat box as well about, is there a common language about CDE? And that's exactly, I think, what, the standards are trying to do and help the industry in terms of establishing that common language, right? And thanks for audience for your comments and questions. So keep them coming. We are looking at your questions and comments. So Frank, if that's okay, I would like to get your thoughts on these too, because you are, one of the, leading CDE providers globally. And, I know you're not selecting the CDE, but you are sort of, ensuring that, the CDE that you provide sort of, is aligned with what the industry needs. So any thoughts on what's important when selecting the proper CDE from your point of view? Right.
Yeah, thanks for the great question, Raul. I think when we got busy around this DIN-SPEC 91391 in 2017, we realized that the CDE becomes a topic more and more. And there was, or there still is in the market, an implicit or an implied need for common data environments. But in the first place, the question is, how do you really select it? How can you translate an implied need into an explicit need? What are those criteria? Is that something what everyone here on the call, who is maybe not experienced already in the topic, to identify by themselves or to run like expensive consulting projects to collect the requirements for it? I think the answer is no. Right now, we have, based on the ISO 19650, within the DIN-SPEC 91391, over 200 criteria freely available, if you just Google them, where you can set your baseline. Is that the foundation you need? And then coming back to the statement of Leon, security, for instance, is not something separate from functional requirements. Can we imagine that it doesn't matter where your data lies? I think we all witness times at the moment where cybersecurity gets more and more important. So that's something what we actually expect from a vendor to be considered, because we want to, the same like without the bank, right? Hopefully our money is safe. So that has to be a fundamental thing or foundation of everything. But in terms of security, what we distinguish in our organization are high compliance requirements, for instance, for high security, for military, or for specific governmental projects, like projects which are related to the Deutsche Bundestag, or the Parliament House, or something else, which really contains higher security than other specific buildings or projects. And this is something what is in addition an opportunity in the future for customers to select.
Thank you, Frank. Some great points there. I heard that, don't think about just the functionality of the CDE when you're thinking about establishing baseline and procuring one, because security must be front and center of the CDE selection process, right? That security is not a separate, the IT team, your business thinking about, and you think about the CDE functionality. It must be that joined up approach, because you're absolutely right. Putting your data on a CDE platform, next generation CDE or first generation, you must think about security first. So yeah, security-minded approach is really, really important. I think I have a kind of a follow-up question on that, Frank, if that's okay. That Oracle, sort of worked on ensuring that the CDE platform that you're providing is 100% aligned with not only ISO 19650, but those 200 plus sort of clauses or items in DIN Spec 91391, as you mentioned, right? So in terms of baseline. So you worked with BSI last year, we worked together, and you sort of established that alignment with your platform Econex, so how important is that, and why did you decide to do that? How important is that from your point of view as a CDE provider to ensure that your platform is fully aligned with not only ISO 19650, but also DIN Spec 91391?
Yes, I think I would like to divide my answer in 3 parts. First part, related to the DIN Spec 91391, we were working together with with Dr. Mingyi Wang from the German Insurance Association. And this wasn't a coincidence, because if you select the CDE, it's active risk management. You think rather from the end. What happened if you are in a legal dispute? Are you really secure that you can fight it for your own purpose, that you get the right what you deserve? Yeah. Based on that, of course, if you look at the development in markets, software categories usually start with, oh, we have a problem, let's get it solved. You have proprietary solutions, lots of them pop up, call it startups. And then in a second phase, the need for exchanging data arises. So there is the call after standards, after exchanging information, and also to agree standards. That's the purpose why organizations like the buildingSMART International does a fantastic job over decades to help the industry to do that everyone works with the best tool available, but is capable to exchange the data. Now comes the point. If vendors are getting to know that, they start claiming for it. They say, oh yes, I'm compatible with that particular standard. But at the end of the day, it's a marketing statement. How can you make sure as a customer it works? So that leads to the third level of certainty or on assurance, that you ask a third party in a market to certify it based on specific requirements. Is that true, what this company is saying? So what you actually achieve here is, from the first level of where everything is very volatile to a standardization area in the middle part, you go to the next level where you set a foundation, and a third party like the British Standard Institute, in Germany that might be the TÜV or other organizations, they justify this is true, and only if you went through this whole assessment, you get the valid certification and the stamp, which is true, which makes life on the flip side for customers when they select it much easier, because they can be assured that the third party stands for that certificate because they are neutral. It's not a statement by the vendor. And the second element, which was exciting for us to understand, it's not only a selection criteria, it also helps for rollout. Because if you run rollout in large organizations, it's usual that there are maybe other solutions in place, and it's important that the rollout manager has the certainty that this works.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. And you made a great point there. It's about not just a marketing statement that our platform is compatible or aligned. It's about, it goes back to Florian's initial point, actually. Florian, you mentioned about trust, right? Having a CDE and trust how can we establish the trust, not only for your own business, but your supply chain, your clients, that the data that you're putting onto a platform somewhere is secured, is aligned, with the international best practice, right? So thanks, Frank, for sharing that, and some of the reasons why you thought, aligning that connects or your platform with ISO 91391 was the right thing to do for your customers and the industry. So Florian, just following on from the conversation to you, then you've been, using that platform as well, CDE, as we discussed earlier. How important it is for you when selecting the platform CDE, to have that, ISO 19650, DIN Spec 9139, or there may be other standards in future as well, that the CDE platform is aligned with that, and have some kind of that, as Frank mentioned, that independent third-party validation, call it certification for that CDE. How important is that for you?
It's very, very important for us because it takes away all the discussions. There are, in the past, you had a lot of CDs and some platforms calling them CDs. Nobody knows what you get. You have to prove all of them yourself, and all with the discussions with decision makers as well as with our employees. Take this one or that one. Is it safe? Is our data secure? If I have something proven against a standard, and that with a neutral institute that on the one hand keeps us untouchable in the decision making, but also in the rollout, like Frank mentioned. And that's for me as the operative director, very, very important to have on the one hand our back free from discussions in the decision, but also to get all the parties on board, our employees, our clients, and all them. And it's easy to do so when you have all these proven CDs after all. And in the project itself, the speed kills if you don't manage to have data flow in the right way. And that's just as I mentioned before, if you have the trust, then the people share their information because they know where it goes and who gets what. And so it's from the first step of making the decision over the rollouts to convincing people to use it, to get really speed in the projects and have with all our different thoughts in a project, every time the right information by the right parties, and all this together makes the proven CDs of the future. And I'm more than happy that this step now is done, because now it makes a lot of easier for us in all this decision-making and rollout phase.
Right. So having some kind of alignment there, and that establishes trust for you and your supply chain, right? And allows you to roll out at scale, right? That goes back to, Frank's point also. He mentioned, having that alignment with global best practices, meaning you can roll out at scale. It's not just, one or two projects, but that allows you that scale and flexibility. So thank you both for sharing the thoughts. I hear a lot, during the conversation, we heard a lot about, that open data, like open CDE, and word about data standards. And there are some comments in the chat box as well by the audience about, the sharing, exchanging data. I see, comments on the volume of data. How important is the support of data standards, and open standards for a CDE? And which role does IFC? So, buildingSMART International, for instance, been leading on this, for years, in terms of establishing the interoperability sort of in the industry. What role does IFC or BCF play in new development like Open CDE we heard today as well, and Open CDE.API? So if I come to you, Leon, because you are in that luxury position, as you said before, that I think you are the best person to start this, this conversation. Any thoughts on that, Leon?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this also goes back to one of the original comments in the beginning, that there's high expectations about CDEs solving things that are now lacking in data exchange. I think the importance of the standards are depending on the type of standard. So using IFC, for example, as a data standard that you can put on a CDE, that really helps in this automation of the workflows. It helps in getting predictions based on the data. So that's a completely different importance compared to BCF, which helps you communicate about the data. And indeed, we have this new Open CDE API, which is, again, something completely different. It's an interface standard that helps you integrate a CDE with other topics. And that's quite of an unknown standard, and it's not a real data standard. It's more like an interface standard. So it's always difficult to explain. And I think Dan has a video ready that we can play. That is a bit more graphical, where we can explain the OpenCDE Document API initiative.
Let's take a look at the OpenCDE Documents API. What we're trying to solve is connect a common data environment with external tools for projects. And when you think about that process, you can see how complex it is, from taking the documentation, the time it requires, to the risk it might take. But what if we can change it from that to just 2 steps? Make it simpler, reduce the effort. And this is what the OpenCDE Documents API does. It's a standardized API that allows applications to connect together. And why don't we take a look at how there's a quality tool like Solibri connects to the Aconex? So let's start a quality insurance model. I'm going to open the Aconex Common Data Environment using the OpenCDE Documents API. I'm going to log to the project that I need information from. From here, I can easily look at the register, identify the files that are necessary for me to build my model, and I can directly push them from Aconex into Solibri. Solibri will be connected to Aconex from this point onwards. That means that these models are actually looking for the updates from Aconex. I can set this up to prompt me every time an update happens in Aconex and push the information automatically into Solibri. So if I set this up, when my subcontractor jumps into the document register and looks for the latest version of these files and update that file inside of the document register and transmit that information to my organization, I just need to be in Solibri. Solibri will automatically show me that it's required an update, and I can be able to push that information from the common data environment in a single seamless effort into my tool. And from here, we can take a look at the reverse workflow, saving information from a tool like Solibri into the Aconex Common Data Environment. Using the OpenCDE API, I can log in again to the project I was working on, and I can take this Solibri file and upload it into the document register using the metadata that normally Aconex has. I can save this information directly from the register, keeping that single audit trail simplified in a very straightforward process with the OpenCDE API, making this document accessible for the rest of the project participants. The OpenCDE API will help the industry and our users. Simplifying the connections will lead to time savings and quality enhancement by removing clunky manual workflows, removing silos of contemporary applications. It will also allow us simple integrations, because when you adopt a standard, it just works. Enabling potential for deeper integrations in the CGBU, and demonstrates commitment to openness to make the life easier to our clients, to working with our products and involved ecosystem partners and solutions. This is the power and potential of the OpenCDE API.
Thank you, Dan. So just a short comment after this video. So I hope this makes it clear that we really have different kinds of standards. So IFC for the data, BCF kind of for the process information, and APIs and interfaces to get this integration between different software tools and different components in a project ecosystem. I think what's important here, and Esteban mentioned this single audit trail. Thanks to this Open CDE Documents API, you'd not only have the traceability of what happened inside your own CDE, but you can force this traceability of the process among multiple tools as well. And I think that's really important when you want to work with this true CDE setup.
Thanks, Leon. It was amazing to see, how two independent platforms can talk to each other in terms of exchanging data and having live connections, in terms of data and data standards, open data standards and open CDE sort of API plays a key role in unlocking that potential, huge potential that we have, right? And I think that goes to Frank's point also earlier that he made about think about CDE as a risk management tool as well, not just in terms of, managing projects. And could we, and you mentioned, Leon, that having that audit trail of data and connects with that quality assurance tool from CDE to quality assurance tool and as a risk management tool. Fantastic. Great to see. I wish we had more time today to go through lots of things, but I'm mindful of that. We are sort of, coming closer to the end of the session. And I still have a couple of really, really good, points that I want to actually, get your thoughts and so that you can share your thoughts with the audience, if that's okay. Thanks, Leon, for that. If we move on to, we already touched upon in our polls, what values can next generation CDE deliver, and how do intelligent platforms make clients and users more efficient? And I know we had a poll earlier and we had some really good balanced view there, but I would like to unpack that a little bit with you, Frank, first, and then Leon, before we move on to our last sort of point. So Frank, any thoughts on that? What we saw in the poll at the beginning from the audience, and your thoughts on that, values for the clients and end users.
Yeah, I think at the moment we have many challenges. Everything is accelerating, progress is accelerating. We have lots of tech. And the question is, how can we make this tech available, practical, tangible? I think the example what Leon just has shared around the Open CDE Document API is a very specific hands-on contribution what clients and users can use from summer on, because it's a standard candidate right now. It's going to be released over summer soonish for all of them. We got pretty good feedback from participating clients. We had like 10 in the customer engagement program, and this is very practical. But this is not enough. Speaking here for a tech vendor, from us, it's of course expected, where are we heading? What is the future? What is the aspiration? And there are, of course, lots of buzzwords out there, which we are all familiar with, AI and machine learning and all of it. But the question is, how can we make that more specific? And what we see at the moment is there is a big appetite to integrate data closer and closer together. This is not only about data containers or documents, which are also models and so forth. It's also about getting the triple together, like scope, which includes models, schedule, and cost data in a meaningful way together to have a better context, to create better insights for the client, for the supply chain, and the individual user. And this would have opportunities when we then really think about how can we make that usable in three aspects. Number one, if those things are better connected, you have from a backwards perspective, clearly better reporting, dashboarding, and so forth. A thing which happens more or less already. But there are two other aspirational elements, which is number one, to have prescriptions, because if you collect all of that data, you can create more meaning out of it, and you can suggest something for the user, what he's supposed to do, because you interpret the data available in a common data environment or in common data environment platforms, because you are able to leverage the ecosystems together to create that meaning. And then in a third way, of course, that's not so far to really move towards predictability, to really say, when I'm here in my schedule, and I'm observing what's happening in my project at the moment, it is not possible anymore if I do not mitigate now actively through management to hold my time plan. So these are clearly elements which we see, and that all goes along with you have to have one user, one org, one project in an organization to tie those products, those solutions stronger together and fight a bit, allow me saying that, the siloed systems, which are all great out there, but we need to bring them together to create more meaning.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. I've captured a couple of great points from what you just said. One is brilliant point is about think big, start small and act now. What I hear from you is the practical users. What can we provide them and what can they do? Think about these possibilities of integrations, right? So really love the point. And it's about also, where we are heading towards the future. What does it look like, right? So it's having the data, time, cost, quality data, captured, but also generating meaningful insights, for clients, for end users, from that data. Really important as well. Start thinking about that. Leon, any quick thoughts on that?
Quick, yeah. When you're cautious about time, you shouldn't ask me to talk about future possibilities. That's running over time easily then. Yeah, for me, there's a lot of potential. So when you look at this OpenCDE API example, that's just the first step. In that example, we had when there's an update, when someone updates a document in the CDE, you get an automatic notification in Solibri, so you can always have the latest version. When you have that power of automatic updates and notifications and triggers, potential is limitless. I mean, imagine that every time someone updates something on a CDE, you get an automated code compliance check, or you get an automated energy calculation. Those kind of things, that's really what drives me at buildingSMART to really focus on both data standardization with IFCs and API standardization with the OpenCDE initiatives. So the combination of these two, I mean, we're only just starting. I think the potential of automatic simulations is massive.
Yeah, fantastic. Great to hear, where we are heading towards. Really exciting where we are heading towards, start collecting data, generate meaningful insight, but also, have that automatic code compliance, which is where we are heading towards, using this sort of, the huge potential that we have by having cross-platform data exchange through open CDE sort of APIs and everything. So thank you so much. Thank you both. This was one last point before we conclude and close today's session. And this is for all of you. So we'll begin one by one. But we talked about platform, we talked about open data sort of standards, also common standards for CDs and what have you. But let's just touch upon the overall outcome that we were discussing at the beginning. It's about net zero goals, carbon neutrality and sustainability agenda. And I would really like to hear your thoughts on the important role of our industry towards achieving the carbon neutrality. So first part of the question is what role do we think that we collectively as industry we play towards carbon neutrality, and what changes do we expect? But also how may a next generation of CDE can support us in those goals, sustainability goals. So if I come to you, Sven, first on that, if you don't mind, please, quick thoughts.
Yeah, very interesting, the question. So I think the CDE helps to avoid redundant data storage and to implement data exchange as efficiently as possible. So this in turn means less data traffic and thus a reduction of the carbon consumption we have. And thus the use of the CDE supports the reduction of carbon consumption in addition to optimized communication and the true single source of truth. So the really truth of all information of a building over the life cycle we have. So I think this sounds like a very good and proper development towards carbon neutrality. And in the future, I imagine that the CDE will have established itself as a state-of-the-art and a central platform. It supports us in exchange data and communicating transparently. in a manufacturer neutral format, but also the focus of the use of a CDE for the entire life cycle of a building will become more central. And also the CDE can support to provide and track the information about the carbon footprint of a project in his life cycle. And I think that's a good way to go to neutral carbon neutrality.
Thanks, Sven, for your thought. Frank, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I think we can spend an hour on talking about that minimum, but let's keep it short. I think we have to divide on what it really means for us in construction. It's about up to 40% according to the statistics, which we can read everywhere. It's 11% construction, 28% on assets. And so if we then look into construction, it's about the core process on one side, but it's also about material, which means what is the carbon footprint within material? So we have to look at these different elements in different investigations or like initiatives to make that better. Because look at Germany 2045, we want to become carbon neutral. Look at UK or US 2050, we want to be carbon neutral. These goals needs to be divided by industries, broken down to clients, private and public, and then through the whole supply chain. So we need to understand what is good. What is a good KPI? How to run it, what to select. And this also means, for instance, for us as Oracle, we have to have a proper agenda becoming carbon neutral as well. How do we run our data centers? So it's one of our goals, for instance, to be carbon neutral as soon as possible. So you can read that on our website. So every vendor, everyone in the supply chain has to contribute to this particular goal. And the common data environment as such, coming back to your original question, can help all of us to make these things transparent. What is the carbon footprint in specific processes, in specific products? How can we simulate things? We will get different type of models, static models, like a persistent model, like what a common data environment is, but also simulation studies. What can we simulate? What would be better alternatives to run the project in terms of material, in terms of the selection of the different vendors in that? And I think all of that is in the beginning right now, and it needs vendors, it needs authorities, standardization bodies like you and clients to work together to identify that and work in the next 10 to 20 years to bring that really to life, that this becomes a currency in projects, which we then really actively can pursue.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. And great point there. Also, it's about supply chain engagement as well, and make sure that we take the whole supply chain on the journey on this. It's not just about, the tier one setting the goals and driving it, but, we need the whole construction as well as asset operation side of supply chain, with us on this journey in terms of achieving the carbon neutrality goal. So thanks for sharing that, Frank. Florian, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, but 1 minute is a little bit short for all the thoughts in my mind just now. I think it's the CDE itself, but the CDE just helps us that we can make great projects, and it starts with the planning, where we at the end fix the footprint for centuries for the projects, and to have the right measures and to track them will be an use case of its own in the future. And to make this visible, to make all the measures visible, there are a lot of standards out and regulations out right now, and to follow all these regulations, but at the end to really engage each project to be net zero must be tracked via the CDE, and you can make hundreds of use cases out of it, but you have to make decisions, you have to follow the path in the strategy, and then also fix that all the measures you have decided to take into account also are done. And for all that, the CDE can be from the first planning step into getting into operations the right tool to track that measures.
Yeah, thanks, Florian. It's a really good point. Think about the whole asset life cycle right from the design stage all the way through to construction and into operation as well. And CD. So thanks for that. And Leon, I know this is really bad of me, choosing you at the last. I know we are running out of time, but Leon, final thoughts.
I'll make it easy for you. I think everything has been said by the panelists, and also the poll in the beginning made it quite clear that CDEs are facilitating net zero. So please take the last couple of minutes to wrap up the session.
Thank you. Thanks, Leon. And thanks everyone, the panelists, most importantly, sharing your thoughts with the audience. And audience, thank you so much for being so interactive and sending your thoughts and comments and questions in the chat box. Unfortunately, we couldn't unpack all of your questions, but please feel free to touch base with any of us, via LinkedIn or whichever way you feel comfortable with. We would be capturing these questions, and if you want to follow up with us on a one-to-one basis, we'd be happy to do that. But thank you so much. And Dan, over to you. Thank you so much for being a great host and running it so smoothly. So Dan, over to you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yep, thank you, Rahul. I've just seen there's a question in the chat about the poll results being made available. We will make the poll results available along with the recording in due course. I would suggest subscribing to our communications, our newsletter, and our YouTube channel. And that's the best way of keeping up to date with everything we're doing. Thank you again to all of the panelists here, and thank you to all of the attendees. You can expect a follow-up email shortly, and we look forward to seeing you in another webinar soon. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.